Bonjour à tous, c'est Simon. On se retrouve sur une nouvelle vidéo. Aujourd'hui, je serai pas tout seul, je serai accompagné de mon ami
Bonjour.
Marshmello, Noob du 27. Alors aujourd'hui, on va assister à un petit event en fête royale qui va durer qui va bientôt commencer dans une minute. Je sais plus trop qu'est-ce que c'est un truc qui va être génial. Alors si ce concept te plaît que je fasse les mini-events en fête royale, oui parce que je les appelle les mini-events, me juge pas, n'hésite pas à t'abonner et à liker. Sinon on attend les 30 secondes. Et je ne vais pas parler pour qu'on puisse tout voir.
Ouais, il fait jour. Ouais,
Oh
le
lol.
soleil.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Bon, j'arrête. 3, 2, 1. Écran blanc.
Ouais, putain.
Ça crache.
Wow, trop bien l'event. Allez, au revoir.
C'est ça l'event.
The badge is better than having some
C'est mon
heart.
fait.
Okay, look how they running. They beating white people down just to show us what's coming, or to show us we nothing, or to show us we only welcome when singing or balling. You shut up and dribble. Rock. Love.
Hey everybody, I'm Carrie Champion. Welcome to We the People. So today we are having a very candid conversation
Bon, si vous
with
voulez lire,
athletes and
il y aura les
artists who
sous-titres en
want
bas.
to make sure that you use your voice to vote. Voting is your voice. So we have so many different issues that have happened in this country. It's really truly unprecedented time. So I'm looking forward to these conversations. I think you'll be educated as well as entertained, but most importantly informed. We have morethanavote.org, whenweallvote.org, and fairfight.com. Those resources are imperative as we try to change our future.
Yeah, la.
There's no way that we can talk about hip-hop or even the fact that we want to talk about activism, black voter suppression, without bringing in this guy straight from Port Arthur, Texas. We are talking about Bumby. He is an activist, a scholar, and an all-around gentleman. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Bun, I don't want to start heavy, but I guess I have to because that's where we are in the world today. It's heavy as hell. And when you think about what needs to happen in this country in terms of change, what's the first thing that you think of?
Equality. That's pretty much the first thing that comes to mind, right? Black people need to be seen as equals in this world. You know, we had to fight just to be recognized as a full citizen in this country and not 3/5.
The world is now seeing what we've known for so long in the culture and in the community. The one way that we can fight is obviously voting. Talk to me about what voting means to you.
I hear people all the time talking about one vote doesn't matter and that voting doesn't make a difference. If that's true, why do they work so hard to suppress the black vote? Because they understand the power of the vote. And so it's time that black people collectively also understand the power of their vote. And not just on a national level, because a lot of times we only have this conversation every 4 years. People need to be very much involved in their local politics. They need to understand who their elected officials are, where they stand on issues that affect you. And you need to use your vote to either support the ones that care about you and your condition, or to elect people who do. A newer initiative that we're dealing with is educating felons, right? So in the state of Texas, if you're a felon, right, if you've been to jail or to prison, but you're no longer on
Il y a
probation
une banane
or
sur l'écran
parole,
au-dessus.
you have the right to register to vote. Another
Le
thing
pire, c'est qu'elle a
that
l'air
was brought to
fière.
my attention is an initiative called Orange, which is happening not just in Houston,
Non,
but all
mais
over the
Aquaman,
country.
là.
If you're in jail currently,
Qu'est-ce
during pre-trial, but
Mais ils
you
font
have
exprès
not
de se mettre
been
devant l'écran.
convicted, like you're still
Non,
in
mais
jail
monsieur,
waiting
depuis avant moi.
for your day in court, you are still eligible to vote.
And you said something so key. They work so hard to hope that we stay uninformed, or more
Je comprends
importantly,
pas
to
tout, mais voilà.
suppress the black vote. If you could do one thing with this
Mais je
message
pense que
that
je
we're trying to
regarderai
send today about how
quand je
important
monterai
voting
ma
is,
vidéo.
what type of images would you like our people to understand and see when they go to these polls and vote, or when they cast their ballots?
I think the images that we've all seen, you know what I'm saying, for decades in this country, if not centuries in this
Je
country,
crois que
we've
ça
seen black
parle.
people oppressed, we've seen black
Comment?
people attacked. So
Je crois
every
que ça
time you
parle
look back
des
and you see those
gens
old
qui
black and white
critiquent les
images
noirs.
of people of color being attacked by dogs and people of color being sprayed with hose,
C'est tellement
that's what they were
bâtard.
fighting for. Back then, they
Qui
were just fighting for a chance to
Je
vote.
pense qu'il y a des
People like
gens
Martin Luther
qui
King
insultent,
Jr.,
voilà,
people
les
like
noirs.
Malcolm
Moi,
X.
je les respecte.
These
Ça se
people
fait pas
died to help us
de les insulter. Ils
be
sont
in the
comme
position
nous.
to have the power that we have now, which
Ouais.
is to be able to cast a vote
C'est
and
des
make a
personnes
decision about the
qui ont
people that have controls over our
peut-être une
lives.
famille.
So, I mean, if you in your own community
C'est comme nous.
need a reason to vote,
On
look
est
at a
unis.
person like George Floyd. If the people in your
Unis.
city are not open to
Unis,
police
bon, avec le
reform,
Covid,
are
c'est un
not
peu chaud.
open to having a conversation about defunding the police, are not open to issues concerning economic equality, judicial equality, and racial equality, right? If they're scared to say Black Lives Matter, you have the power to put people in those positions who do believe that Black Lives Matter, who do believe in racial equality, economic equality, judicial equality,
That's
right? Who see us as human beings. And if the people in your community don't feel that way, vote them out. It's that simple. It's just vote them out. We don't have enough time to sit around and hope that people change their minds.
Yeah, Bumpy, you point out something so important. We have the power, and that is in our vote, and that is with our voice, and that's how we use our voice. I think of where we are right now. People say this is a particular moment, but it is a movement, not just a moment. It
C'est
is a
le truc de
movement.
vote. Je comprends pas.
Why, in your opinion, was it George Floyd's death? Why was that the chosen brutality for people to say, "Oh my God, Black people are still oppressed in this country," and it is not fair.
Ouais,
I
en
think
gros,
it's
ça parle vraiment
twofold,
de moi.
Carrie. In so many
C'est
different
vraiment sérieux.
encounters between people of color and the police, there simply is
Le
no
premier
proof
qui
of what
récolte dans
happened
les
in the
commentaires,
interaction. And so what
crois-moi que
happens
je le
is
bats.
in a court of law, it tends to lean towards the policeman's point of
Il
view,
insulte la personne
right?
qui est en
In
train de
this
parler.
case, we
Il
saw
va
very
tellement le
clearly
regretter.
what happened. I think the other thing is due to the fact that everyone was at home, basically, during this time period in relation to the coronavirus, you couldn't avoid it, right? It was on every television station. It was on every social media platform. Everywhere you turn, you were constantly hit upside the head with this message. You see in the interaction that this man did nothing to deserve what happened.
That's right. And I think so well said, because if you think about it, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't worth it, and he didn't have to lose his life. I think that you touched on something that a lot of people talk about, and that is now defunding the police. That has been such a huge conversation, but there's so many misconceptions around defunding and dismantling. If you will, educate the audience.
All right, so most people, when they hear the term defund the police, they tend to think of, oh, they're going to take away our police department. Nothing could be further from the point. Defunding the police means that in certain communities, even Houston, take for example, we had over $1 billion allocated to our police force. Now, what is that money being used for? Some of that money tends to be allocated towards riot shields, right? Pepper spray, right? That kind of thing. That's only used against the people that fund this budget, right? So why would the people want to
Quand
supply
je
the
zoome,
police with
j'ai
the means
l'impression que
to
le chat il
oppress
va
them? If
attaquer.
the police are concerned about
Bah,
the
il va
situation
m'attaquer
in
vu comme
certain
il regarde mon
communities
écran.
with a higher crime rate, well, higher crime rates tend to happen in
Faut que je
communities
rate.
where there's not there's not employment opportunities, right? There's not a lot of social services, and people are going to do what they need to do to take care of themselves and their families. When the community has more opportunities for employment, more opportunities for upward mobility, then they tend to be a less of a strain on the government. They tend to have a lower crime rate, and because of that, we'll have less need for the police in those communities.
You are passionate about so many different things in terms of making sure that we are holding our leaders accountable. Talk to me about some of the other projects that you're working on.
Well, right now, obviously, being a part of More Than a Vote is essential. We're dealing with primaries in this country right now. And we just want to educate people. We want to inform people because people are tired, they're angry, they're concerned, and they want information and they want action. And so we want to make sure that we give them the right information and lead them in the right direction. And we thank the people that do not look like us for standing with us right now because it's very important that people who aren't black be involved, because if black people could have gotten rid of racism, we would have done it hundreds of years ago. And so I'm trying to use my voice and my platform just to let people know that if they feel like I do, there's a number of places they can go to enact change in their community. People need to know about how their city council runs. They need to know that they have the ability to speak when city council meets, to let them know that that's not the way that they feel their city needs to be run. Those are not the places that they feel the money of their
And
community needs to be allocated.
And Bubby, even a step further, they can run for office in their local community. They can run for positions. Like, people act like they leave it up to somebody else. If you're upset, it's not hard to get on the school board. It's not hard to be a part of the city council. It really isn't. And depending on how small your town is, you could be a mayor. It's the power is with the people, and we need to just know that that's happening.
Absolutely. And it's always been with the people. You know, if you look at Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, right? She felt that there was a system of racism and a system of oppression that led to her son's death.
C'est coupé comme ça. Oh non, ça bug. RIP. Oh non, ça bug. Ah ben. Désolé, spectateur. Si ça bug. Ma co, elle commence à... Elle fait des chocs à piquer. Ah, je suis vraiment désolé pour vous. Ça fait ça. C'est ma co, de temps en temps, elle fait ça. Est-ce que ça revient? Je crois que ça bug plus. Ouais, j'ai un écran noir. C'est mauvais signe. Je peux bouger au moins? Ouais. Tu m'entends? Ça craint.
You have a support
Ah, c'est bon,
system
je vois.
that believes in what you're doing and supports you in what you're doing. You have everything you need to go out there and fight the good fight.
Et
And for those that
actuellement,
don't,
je suis
there's a
en
community.
144p. Non, ça coupe. Ça a coupé?
Non.
Ah, moi ça coupe de temps en temps. C'est hyper relou.
Ah.
C'est dommage que ça fasse ça. Ah, vous aurez pas tout. Moi, c'était intéressant. Ça parlait du racisme. C'est intéressant de savoir. Et c'est pas bien.
Il y a de la
C'est
musique.
pas bien d'insulter les noirs. C'est pas bien. Comme je le répète, ce n'est vraiment pas bien. Je respecte vraiment les gens qui ont une peau différente.
She also has a comedy special highlighting her.
Tu regarderas ma vidéo, je suis en 144p. C'est la fin?
Tu sais que c'est pas fini. Hein.
Mais moi je vois la fin. Moi y a plus rien.
Et moi je vois une noire avec du rouge à lèvres violet.
C'est pas raciste que t'as dit.
Bah non.
Ok,
J'ai juste dit que je vois une dame noire avec du rouge à lèvres violet.
j'avoue. Je suis désolé. Moi je vois un écran blanc.
Ah. C'est bête.
Ben plutôt l'écran quand y a rien. Mais c'est beau hein, aussi.
Hein?
Tu vois c'est ce que je vois.
Ah.
Y a rien.
Oui. Oui, de la récréation, mais sur une... Longtemps.
Je suis désolé les gens si ça fait ça.
On va sortir un grandi. Ok.
Tu peux me dire qu'est-ce qui se passe?
En fait, elle explique qu'on peut vivre ensemble, noir ou blanc.
Bah oui, ça c'est vrai par contre. Je me demande pourquoi il y a toujours des cons qui respectent pas des gens qui ont une peau différente. Les mecs, c'est la même personne. C'est les mêmes personnes.
Ah, mais elle vient de dire exactement la même chose. Elle vient de dire nous sommes tous les mêmes personnes, peu importe la couleur de peau.
Mais c'est vrai. Ça. Putain, ça fait chier que moi je
Mais
vois
attends.
pas.
Ouais, c'est bon.
Moi il faudrait que je relance mon mode créa, j'ai la flemme.
Fête royale.
Merde, ça me met en online. Ah, comment je vais faire moi si ça fait ça?
Il y a deux skins bambiers, ce sont mes gardes.
Bah,
moi j'ai des gardes.
explique hein, ce qu'il dit, hein, parce que moi, ça risque des choses de savoir qu'est-ce qu'il y a si ça veut.
Attends, il faut que je me brosse les dents.
Fuck. Bah, tu reviens. Ça te dit encore des choses? J'ai une question.
Ouais.
Tu peux dire ce qu'il dit? Maintenant vous saurez ben, vous aurez un aperçu de ben, vous entendrez Début 27 en train de se brosser les dents pendant un event. Est-ce que ça aurait été possible? Je ne sais pas.
C'est un événement illogique.
Et pourquoi ça bug? Revenez. Mais moi je veux savoir. C'est intéressant de savoir. Ah. Bon, je crois qu'on peut remercier une seule personne. Ben, de 1, on peut remercier Noob 27 qui nous a fait un event qu'il est en train de se laver les dents. Et numéro 2, on peut remercier Mako qui a... Je crois qui a sauté parce que je vois plus rien. Non mais je crois que j'ai le temps de me balader. Ah punaise, c'est saoulant. Tu peux me dire qu'est-ce qu'il dit? Parce que là en fait, c'est un peu chiant que je puisse pas voir. Attends, est-ce que si je m'éloigne ou si je change de skin par miracle, ça marche? Ne jugez pas, ne jugez pas mon skin. Il est bien comme il est. Bon, j'ai la flemme de changer plus. Voilà. Petite anecdote, ce skin est mon skin tryhard. Est-ce que c'est bête? Totalement. Ça marche toujours pas. À cause de mon skin, on voit rien. Oh, c'est bon, je vois. Oui. C'est la puissance de la banane.
And to that end, I have to ask you this, because the way that we do that, we use our voice, and our voice right now in this
Moi, je me
world,
mets à
in this
côté de toi.
country, is our vote. And
Ah, je vais me
everyone
mettre à droite,
talks
ça
about
je vois
voting
rien.
power. Right, more than ever, we understand that it's not just
Mais je
about
crois que c'était pas
voting
obligé de faire ce
for
bruit.
man in office, it's about your local elections, it's about the mayor, it is about the district
Ce
attorney, the
rinçage de
people
la
who
bouche à
have
la
the power
menthe, c'est
to bring
dégueulasse.
charges against police if police brutality is an
Alors,
issue
ils sont en
in your
train de
community.
dire un truc
You care
hyper
about your
important.
school district. You can run for the school board. I asked
Et
this
toi, t'es en train de te laver les dents et tu dis ah, c'est dégueulasse. Non.
Talk about that very lovingly. What does voting mean for you?
You know, I think voting is power. I remember, you know, I became a naturalized citizen
Non,
back
en vrai,
in
le sujet là, il est pas très important ce qu'ils sont en train de
when
dire.
because I was still a minor, my mom naturalized, and so we were able to do it under her. And just even that power of like we are American citizens and all the access that we have by being
Le
citizens.
truc, c'est que
One of
quand
those
même, ça parle
accesses,
du
those
racisme,
access to power being voting.
ce qui
It's
est
a
très
big
important.
deal. It's a big deal because not only are we
Parce que c'est un cas dans le monde presque, je dirais beaucoup de monde ne respecte pas les gens. C'est vrai.
On va dire 30-40% de la population.
Je dirais même un peu plus. En France, il doit y avoir minimum la moitié de la France.
Or whatever
Genre
it is,
ça.
and I'm not putting teachers on blast. I think teachers do a phenomenal job, but for some reason, we do not.
Et après, ce sont des bêtes. C'est les bêtes qui font ça.
Faut juste pas les écouter.
Je crois que c'est parti en... Je crois qu'on est parti sans le truc là. Je sais pas, ils ont rigolé. Je sais pas de quoi ils parlent.
When you think of voter suppression in this country, what does it look like for you?
It's the systems. When we talk about voter suppression, we also talk about systematic racism, right? It's all the
Quand je vais
systems
voir
that
le
set up.
rush,
And we've
je vais être choqué
okay,
du temps.
maybe your job will give you a
Pourquoi?
half day, or
On sait
maybe,
jamais, hein, des fois ça peut
you'll be
durer du
able to
temps.
get this luxury. It shouldn't be a luxury. It should be built into the system. It should be built into the fabric of how we vote. But maybe you'll be able to get this luxury in order to enable you to go vote. Think about everything disenfranchised, marginalized black person has to endure in a day. So in a day, you need to get to work. If something happens to your car, if something happens to your child care, if something happens to, there's so many factors along the way that can send you into a tailspin as an American. And then you add on as a person of color. If you're
Désolé
just
pour
trying
la
to get to
qualité du
vote
jeu.
and you already have to go through all of these hurdles and hoops in your everyday life, imagine the one day when your voice really is supposed to matter the most in this country. But then you also see all the times that you tried to have your voice matter and then it's been shut down, repressed, told it doesn't matter. And then you're kind of like, what's the point?
How do we keep hope though? If I'm watching this right now, I want to I how do we as a people stay hopeful? How do we believe in the promise that these quote unquote
Ça va pas
forefathers have
durer
given
jusqu'à
us?
Because
minuit,
have you
rassure-moi.
met black people? By
Tu
Déjà
peux
en
retirer
haut.
ton
law,
plein, c'est saoulant.
like hope is infused in our
Quoi?
DNA. Like you're
C'était
like
saoulant
black people. Like if
d'avoir
we
un micro.
haven't been if we haven't been broken
Ouais, non, mais
down,
je voulais te montrer qu'il y a des gens
be it
en
through
haut.
slavery,
Ah ok.
through
Give
capitalism,
it to me.
through
Give it to me.
colonization, through
Yeah,
segregation,
you're right.
through I mean, listen, black the history of black people in this country is at one point we were 3/5 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And one thing,
That was a written law. And look at us now. We are whole. We are black girl magic. We are black boy joy.
Moi je me
We
dis,
are, you know what I'm
pourquoi
saying?
ça devrait pas être
What I
dans ma
think about
tête
in terms
après.
of giving
Après
us
peut-être
hope,
que je
right?
dis tout simplement une
We're
connerie.
making a
Pourquoi
lot
ça
of
devrait
people
pas
nervous
être
right now,
puni
right?
par la loi?
We're making a lot of people
Ben,
nervous right now because they're like,
Cette
Bah,
chose.
France, il y a
hey,
deux
we put
États
all
où
these
on était
obstacles in
puni.
their
Hein.
way,
Alors la personne
and
à droite était
these
pas obligée de se
jokers
mettre en
are
face.
resilient. But that should give us hope. That should give us hope that like we can't stop, won't stop. I mean, I went to the school of Diddy. You know what I'm saying? Hashtag, bye bye, bye bye. Harlem taking it right now.
Après je
We
pense que
can't
ça doit être
stop,
puni.
won't stop. And
Après, me
and
jugez pas
I think
si
that's
je me
our
suis
motto.
trompé.
We can't stop voting and we won't
J'aimerais
stop
pas,
voting. We can't stop marching and
j'aimerais
we
pas
won't stop
me prendre
marching.
pour un con.
We can't stop
Qu'on me
thriving
prenne
and
pour
we
un con.
won't stop
Voilà.
thriving.
to that end, because you led me directly there, I've been asking everyone who's appeared on this platform, what does activism look like? And I feel like back in the day, we had an idea. Yes, it is marching. Yes, it is protesting. Yes, it is speaking out against things that we feel are not right or unjust. But talk to me about what
Sinon, t'as vu
activism
où je
looks
suis?
like for Yvonne Woodley.
Listen, activism, I think the beauty of activism is that it has many faces, right? You're going to have the people on the front lines. Like, you know what? Martin Luther King marched, but there were a lot of women who were in the homes like, hey, BT Dubs, when they come back, this is how we support all the people who are marching on the front lines. And we're going to be here doing what we know to do best here. And you know what? Somebody needs to bail them out of jail so that so now we need to be in the community, getting money or whatever it is. So it's like everybody has a position to play. And so play your position like a shortstop, bro. So whoever you are and whatever you do, play your position. So activism could look like, you know what? I'm not the one that's built to be on the front line, but you know what? My pockets go deep, so I'm gonna support the people on the front line. I'm a comedian. Black joy is a form of activism.
There's always a call for entertainers or celebrities that have the platform to do something. Why aren't you speaking out? I'm not a believer in thinking that it's mandatory. Like you said, everyone can be an activist and be activated in different ways. But talk to me about the connection. Talk to me about the marginalization in your world and how you feel like it even inspires you to say more and use your platform to do more.
Beneath the surface of what we do, like Niecy Nash says, it's the who, right? The who is the person who's going to be like, hey, let me call this out. Either blind racism in terms of overt racism, in terms of ways that we can be better, in terms of ways that we can actually be more uplifting to the community that you may not even realize that you're serving.
Before I let you go, talk to me about the urgency, in your opinion, for people to vote, our people to get out and vote this coming election.
Yeah, I mean, guys, Ryan, if you think you're tired now, I'm telling you right now,
Pourquoi je chante?
we cannot take this sitting down. We can't take this jokingly. I understand that it may be hard to figure out who to vote for, But at the end of the day, we got to vote for our families. We got to vote for our legacies. We got to vote for continued progress. We have to vote for upward mobility. We have to vote for equality in a way that is long lasting. And if we succeeded before, we can do it again. You talk about the whole. This is the time. This is not the time to give up. This is not the time to pretend away that we haven't made progress. We have. There's still much more to be done. And you know what? We might have to get to a point where we pass the baton to our children and our children's children, but we still have work to do now for that generation.
Von Orgy, you are everything. You are Molly, but you are not Molly. But I love you so much as Molly on HBO's Insecure. You are an amazing podcaster, Jesus and Jola. Shout out to Lovey. And then we also have movies. Like you, the world, you're a model, a cover model. Also, wait, don't let me forget your hugely successful stand-up comedy special on HBO. Girl, you're doing it all. And I am so grateful. You're truly the dream, not just the American dream. You're the black girl, brown girl, do it all dream, the immigrant dream, everything. You're a beautiful, beautiful soul. I really, really mean that from the bottom of my heart. Yvonne Orji, ladies and gentlemen, nothing but the best and excellence personified. Thank you so much.
I love you so much, Mama. Mwah.
Ouais, il y a ton pote Simon à côté.
So Atlanta has been one of the hotbeds in terms of political unrest and social injustice. We've seen so much happen in that city, and we've also seen so much come from that city, including one of our very own founding fathers of the civil rights
C'est quand
movement.
même étonnant que Fortnite ait décidé de publier ça, de mettre ça sur Fortnite. Après, c'est intéressant. C'est intéressant de savoir que Epic Games s'intéresse
Russ,
à
I'm
cette
not going to
cause.
fan out and tell you what some of my favorite songs were that I listened to repeat on yours. We're going to get to the topic at hand. So we got to talk about, recently you did an interview where you shared your outlook on culture and music. And you also were very candid about the fact that you have a privilege and that it's necessary for you to give back. Tell everybody about what that means.
It's very obvious I'm white and I'm in black culture and I'm benefiting financially off of it. So I feel like if you're a white person financially benefiting off of black culture, you have to put finances back into black culture. It's that simple. The screenshots with your feelings, it just comes off like fake empathy.
Là, je crois qu'on est parti
It
sur
comes
de la
off
musique
very
maintenant.
dismissive and very oh, that sucks for y'all. But anyway, back to what I was doing.
Have you felt that way always, or is it now because of the time of where we are in this country?
I've always had the feeling. I think now it's just obviously elevated. It's a new level, and there's new, it's to the point now where you can't. First of all, you can't not say anything. Second of all, though, I just think saying something isn't enough anymore. I think, if you have the ability to put money back into a culture that you're financially benefiting from, you have the ability to, you should.
It's interesting that you talk about it in that way because some people do believe that silence is the best way to go because it's hard to talk race, especially if you're white and you're in the black culture. People just feel as if they can't talk about it. They feel awkward. They feel as if they don't have the privilege or the voice or the words. How do you find yourself right now in terms of interacting with people when they want to talk to you about social injustice, police brutality? What's going on in this country right now?
Well, first of all, picking and choosing whether you want to be silent or not about race, that's a privilege in and of itself. But no, I mean, I try to just do my best to listen to the black people around me and the educated black people I have in my life. So I do my best to not act like I have all the answers for everything, especially in a culture that I'm not from. But that's why when we decided to raise the money for Black Lives Matter organizations, when we raised 500,000, we got on the phone with some of the women who started Black Lives Matter. I got on the phone with Tamika Mallory. I was on the phone with Karen Civil and talking with my friends to make sure the money went to like the correct places, and people who really need it. It's just about listening. That's all. It's about listening.
Let's talk about that for a moment because the way I think of activism, for me, it looks very differently. It's not necessarily just protesting on the front lines. I think that's great. But what about being an activist in the way in which you have decided to be one. What inspired you? What did it look like? You said you raised money for Black Lives Matter. What did you do?
Mhm.
Walk us through everything that you did and how you find yourself in this moment right now.
So for me, it was 3 years ago. I had like a string of festivals, and I decided that I was going to wear T-shirts with a message on them because I figured, what better, what better time to use a platform than in front of a bunch of people. So one of the T-shirts I wore was, "If you want to change the system, speak up. White silence is pro-racism. The whole thing." And it didn't really it kind of got swept under the
Ah oui,
rug back
absolument.
then. But when all this stuff started happening again, and it's been happening, the police brutality against innocent black people, I was like, man, I'm not the biggest
Sinon,
artist in the
c'est fini.
world, and I certainly don't have the most white fans in the world, but I got a good amount of people that I can definitely mobilize and turn into some money. And I know they're down for the cause because it's merch, it's a good
Ah,
thing. And I've always been
$2
outspoken anyways, And so, how am I going to be in black culture and not be outspoken about racism?
And then I got to ask you this because you grew up in Atlanta, so that gives you a heads up, depending for so many people, because you're in the crux of that beautiful black city where there are so many wonderful black leaders, home of so much great music and things that speak to our culture right now. And we are really getting our word out, especially with this platform today, and saying
Mhm.
that we must use our voice to vote. Talk to me about what the importance of voting for you in this upcoming election.
Yeah, so full transparency, I had never voted before, ever. Um, and because I was one of those people who was like, my vote doesn't matter, and I don't know, maybe it's because I was younger, maybe it's because I really thought that, or I don't know, but I just think that it's got to, now this is a bit of a privilege to say it's got to a breaking point for me because obviously it's been past the breaking point for black people, but I think that as a whole, the young people need to get out and vote because we're the ones that never show up. You know what I mean? We never show up to vote, but we're the future. So it's like, look, we got to go out there and vote, and then whatever happens, happens. But at least we did our part. You got to do
You
your
know,
part.
you're very candid in saying that you just decided to vote, and I think there's a beautiful irony in the fact that you have your fans saying, "Because of you, I'm voting."
Right.
And there's something beautiful about that. But I want to know why now for you. Why in this moment is it important for you to vote? And what hit your spirit to say, "Yes, this is the time to do it"?
Honestly, because I think that George Floyd really uh woke up a lot of people who, including myself, who I was vocal and outspoken about racism. I put it in my lyrics, I put it on t-shirts, I would talk about it in interviews, I was vocal about it. But that video in that moment, I think me along with a lot of other people just kind of was like, all right, like words are simply not enough anymore. We gotta do something, whether it's raising money, whether it's voting or all the above. Like we got to do something, and I'm ashamed that it took that for me to be like, I need to raise money and I need to vote. It's a shame, and I don't know. I guess it snapped a bunch of people out of it. And even if you were vocal and whatnot, it's time to actually put your money where your mouth is. It's time to go vote. It's time to just stop talking about it and be about it. And it's been time for that, but like I said, I'm ashamed that it took me this long to actually really be about it, but I'm here now.
So, Russ, we all know that this is going to be your first time voting. Tell me what that
Yeah.
experience is going to be like for you in terms of what you're excited about.
I think you know what it's gonna do for me. It's gonna let me know that I'm contributing to something bigger than myself, and I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm being about it because for so long, and I know I'm not alone with this, but standing on the outside and just screaming about this and that and this should change, and it's like, all right, but did you vote? you know and so I know it's going to feel good to know that I played a small role, and that's the problem. I think the mentality of like, my vote doesn't matter needs to be changed to, my vote, albeit small, does matter. It's a role I'm playing, and if I play my part and you play your part, and he and she plays their part, then we make a difference. But it'll feel. I have a feeling it's gonna it's gonna feel very, very bigger than me. And I think when you realize that giving uh actually feels better than receiving, that's when you start wanting to do your part and contribute. So voting is an easy way to give. You know.
Yeah. To whom much is given, much is required, and you have been given a huge platform, and we are so grateful for you, Russ. Philanthropist, artist, community activist, first time voter. We appreciate you for doing
Yes.
this, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, la la.
So, cities like Atlanta and Chicago have been at the forefront of the discussions, especially now in this country when we're talking about COVID 19 and systemic racism, as well as police brutality and what we can do in this country. Again, we're continuing our conversation, letting you know that your voice is your vote and your vote is your voice. We can change where we
Ah,
are in
c'est
this country
fini.
currently. I'd like to welcome in Chicago Cubs right fielder Jason
Ah, c'est pas
Hayward. I
fini.
appreciate you. I brought in Atlanta and
Ah non,
Chicago
moi j'en
because
ai
I know
trop
you grew
marre.
up in the metropolitan area of Atlanta, more
Ah non, c'est bon.
specifically McDonough. Let's be technical, and and you have been very vocal throughout this entire time in terms of what our country's been experiencing. Let's look at the past month and a half, if you will. What has been the hardest thing for you to deal with?
The hardest thing for me to deal with, Carrie, this last month has just been going from the virus shutting everything down to us being called to action. We've had multiple police brutality situations. We've had people protesting, wanting to get the message out. But I really realized that I need to be a part of the positive message and make sure that doesn't get lost in all the chaos going on for people to actually hear from a reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved.
A reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved, which leads us to More Than a Vote. It is a beautiful collective of Black athletes and artists. You are a part of that. Talk to me about why that's important for you right now and this be a part of that collective.
To me personally, it's important to be a part of that because I've somewhat used baseball and my craft as an excuse to not get more involved in voting. But I can't any longer use baseball and work as an excuse not to get educated and not also to show people like at any moment in time, any walk of life, we can make a difference.
So tell me in your words, what does activism look like for you?
In my words, it looks like LeBron James, the biggest athlete right now on the planet, speaking up and breaking the ice for everyone. And I think for the first time, people see and hear from us. So now we have white teammates, we have other people speaking up and realizing, okay, like this is how we go about doing this. And to me, right now, social media, athletes speaking up, entertainment speaking up, like we're trying to do with More Than a Vote.
You said something I thought was so key because covering sports for so long, I know that it's tough for Black players specifically in Major League Baseball to talk about how they feel. Adam Jones did it in a very eloquent way early on, but there are very few that are vocal. You said you all were afraid. Why use that word and why were you afraid?
We was afraid because in 2019 there was 68 of us total, and there are 38 teams. There's 25-man roster on each team. There's a 40-man roster, which is on each team as well. And there aren't many of us. So we're outnumbered in that sense, but not always in a negative way when it comes to our teammates and our clubhouses. But to get to this point, you have to move a certain way. You got to be careful what you say. You can't ruffle feathers. You can't come off in any way. Much like other Black entertainers, much like yourself, probably having to live through life every day. But to get to the highest level, you gotta you gotta be seen and not heard. So baseball is, like I said, it was time for us to try and speak up and make a difference and show it's okay to do so because we can't be quiet any longer.
That is a button up, be quiet, be seen but not heard. That is a an expression that a lot of Black folks can relate to in whatever aspect of professionalism that they experience, especially if they don't work for themselves. They just feel that. That is also a socialization that we have as Black folks, especially like you said, if you want to get to the higher level. And for so long, I felt it bubbling right underneath the surface that so many of us who were in whatever positions we were, who had platforms, were tired of pretending and looking the other way and spending so much time making others comfortable while we were uncomfortable. Do you feel that this is the type of movement that is sustainable, or is it just for a time?
So it takes everyone joining in on the conversation, and right now I feel like more than ever there is little things as possible to distract from bigger issues. And we saw on draft day, we saw our president Bill Epstein holding up a sign saying Black Lives Matter and wanting to
Yeah,
include the rest
yeah.
of MLB in that. But now we're having those conversations as well. So I definitely think this is sustainable, and it's not always just going to be the popular thing to do. You know, this is something that people want to get right because they know we care.
Jason, you said you think it's sustainable, that what you're seeing, especially with your colleagues in baseball, that this can be something where you're feeling more comfortable, feeling more safe to share how you feel about social injustice and police brutality. What are you doing right now in this moment with your platform to help change how we look at voting and how to educate the culture and the community about voting?
Well, first, what I'm doing, Carrie, is joining up with more than a vote and joining up with other athletes and entertainers to get that message out and use our platform in that sense as a group. And to try to create a brand with this to make it something that's not just about the election coming next year, that it's about
Je vois plus
people
rien.
getting educated for years to come and figure out where to vote and how to vote. We've got people in different areas that cover different demographics and influence different areas of people. And as a baseball player, as a black baseball player, I feel like now, like we talked about, it's finally the time to show people that you can use your voice in this profession. You don't have to be afraid. And to me, that can help someone, help a kid growing up. He can see me, he can see other guys that were in the video we posted saying, hey, this is what they're standing for. They're speaking up for these things, and it's okay to want to play baseball. It's not lame. It's not something I have to be as afraid of as I was before. So I feel like that's my role in this. I have a younger brother as well. He's 24. He also plays baseball. So I've got to lead by example. I can't just always, come up with a good answer that sounds good on TV when I get asked a question on, what do we need to do to make changes.
Oh, il
So
y a une
I'm joining
banane
up
de
here to
toucher.
make sure that I take action and get educated myself. For one, so many people, I feel like in Atlanta, they're on the move. Well, when you want to try to make a vote and try and cast your vote, you have to do it by mail. You have to sign up for an absentee ballot. Then you have to get another ballot in return. They have to send it back to you. Well, for me personally, they didn't send that back until it was too late. Right? We didn't get it in the mail to the address that's an Atlanta address at my parents' house. We didn't get that in the mail until it was too late. And then from other friends and family that are still in Georgia right now, I just hear about them being held in lines too long and trying to get off work. And we know how it is for any family, but let alone a black family in the city or in the suburbs trying to take care of their family and trying to provide for them. You try to get off work and then you're like, wait a minute, you start looking at the clock. It's like, oh, this is not going to happen today, right? And so I saw, Mayor Keisha Bottoms, reach out via social media
Quoi?
to people and say, hey, I'm going to address these issues right now. I need y'all to stay in line to cast your votes. Keep hanging in there. So to me in Georgia, that's what that looks like.
Well, it's interesting that you even bring that up because there have been all these images, specifically from Georgia, because that's such a battleground, where you see people, especially when it came to the primaries, doing whatever it takes. And this is real life voter suppression that you're talking about. It's been happening for decades. It's not fake. What you're saying, these examples of sending you your ballot too late after the fact or shutting down the polls at 6 o'clock while people still are in line, that's a real life issue. There needs to be some type of change.
Et
And I
j'ai
think
remarqué un
that what we're
truc.
doing right now
La
is
banane qui est à
fair.
côté de moi,
But the
elle est beaucoup
idea
plus
of voter
sûre que moi.
suppression, do you think that that is well
Logique.
known, especially with
Et toi,
folks,
elle évolue.
within the generation, your generation?
I think
Mais
it's
sinon, chez
known
Titi, il n'y a plus
in
rien.
our communities, right? I don't think
Je
it's
vois.
spoke on enough. I don't think there's been
C'est pour
enough
ça
Ouais,
light
que je
ça.
brought
parle
to it.
pas.
Bring it to light.
C'est
Let
pour bien
people hear
écouter
about it. Let
ce qu'ils
people learn
disent.
about what that looks like. And get more people to say, okay, look, like this is going to happen. We have to expect this, and we can no longer make the excuse. We can't say they didn't warn us.
Jason, everybody knows, or it feels as if everyone knows that the time is now. America's paying attention to us. We have their eyes, we have their ears. If you look toward the future, what are you most excited about in terms of seeing a change?
I'm excited about how fast the word is traveling. That the word is being spread right now. The biggest athletes, the biggest icons, biggest entertainers are doing their part, but I'm also seeing people out there on the streets doing their part. When so many things got lost, could have very easily got in the commotion when it came to protests, and you saw rioting, you saw looting. People still stood their ground. People still went out there and said, look, we're doing this for the right reasons. We're going to come together. We're going to use drones. We're going to use social media. I feel like this is a new wave of getting things done the right way and just spreading the message.
You're right about that, and you're right. People are spreading the word unapologetically. We out here. We doubling down. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Right.
Yeah, la la.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to welcome a friend, a brother, family member, if you will, former colleague, NBA great, sports analyst, philanthropist. He does it all, and he's here to give us his time and his platform to talk about something that is so important, and that is voting. Everybody, welcome Jalen Rose to We the People. Talk to me about how important it is for the people who know you and love you and look up to you. Why is it so important that you use your platform to talk about voting?
Initially, we have to get past the stigma of the mental systemic racism that comes with the presidential race, governors, mayors, senators, judges. We've been conditioned to believe that our vote does not matter. So usually when we looked up at all of those races and people that were running, not only did they not look like us, we didn't believe they were there to represent our best interest.
Bon, c'est le dernier
So
que je
therefore,
fais, hein,
as a collective,
personnellement.
we didn't mobilize until Barack Obama, and we
Ah,
felt a
le
sense
dernier
of
interview
hope
que je
that
fais.
finally our
Pourquoi la
country is
dernière
going to
vidéo?
do something that
Bon,
we
en gros,
felt
parce
would
qu'il
never
y a encore
happen
de...
in our lifetime.
En fait,
And
ils
I
changent de
remember
gens
being at
pour...
the inauguration in
Comment
2008. I
Ils
made
changent de
sure I
personne
was
pour...
there. And
Oh,
we
comment
voted in
Pour...
2016.
je sais pas trop, pour voir
We didn't
la...
vote, Carrie. We
Pour
didn't
entendre
vote.
la...
And
ce
so
que
many
les gens
people
ont à
try to
dire
make this
propos
political.
de
This
ça.
is not
Bon,
political.
c'est la dernière
Me
personne
telling
que je
somebody
fais.
to vote is like telling somebody to pay taxes. So that's one, getting
Je
over the
pensais que
stigma
tu
of
parlais de
nobody
dernière
is
vidéo
going to
sur
represent our
YouTube.
best interest.
Ah,
And then number two, the reality is that the
non,
person
non.
that gets the most votes
C'est loin
doesn't
d'être fini.
necessarily win the presidency.
Très loin.
That's uncomfortable right there.
Bonjour.
Because that's actually
Bonjour,
what
copain
took
banane.
place in
On est
2016.
combien, là?
The electoral college chose
C'est
the
toi, là?
president. And if you put all of their pictures
Non,
up,
moi j'ai dû
I'm pretty
quitter.
sure they look a lot more like
Dommage.
each other than they look like you and I.
Parce que genre,
How about
je
that?
sais pas pourquoi
And
il y
then
avait
the
plus
third
rien.
thing, especially in urban
Bah, moi, ce que j'avais fait,
environments,
c'est que j'avais
oh
changé de
man, it
skin, puis
creates
ça avait
barriers
fonctionné.
for us, Terry. It's like you gotta jump over
Moi
the
ça fait
fence,
15 fois
you
que je
gotta
le fais.
run past the dog, you gotta jump on the hood of the car. The lines is
Bon,
5
je vais
miles
changer de skin
long.
en
You get
attendant.
up to the
Car la banane, c'est
pole
bien
and
beau,
they don't
mais on n'y
work.
voit que dalle.
Elderly people working in the
Je suis
city.
désolé si on voit rien.
Ouais, mais du coup t'entendras plus rien. Imagine t'as même de tout moi.
Ouais, ça serait bête. Hop, on va mettre pire au crâne. Ne me demandez pas pourquoi si je le mets. C'est un skin que j'aime bien. Voilà. Moi je lag. Allez, on va revoir
Ouais, et encore.
cette interview à propos du racisme. Écran blanc.
T'as le même bug que moi.
En fait, je crois que c'est parce que je me suis trop éloigné.
Everybody
Non,
involved,
c'est bon.
we will make a difference.
Well, let's talk about more than a vote. There is a black collective of athletes, artists, coming together and saying voter suppression is real, especially in the black community. When you just talked about, I gotta...
Écran noir. Ah, ça craint. Écran noir. Si je m'éloigne. Vous êtes combien ici, là?
Il y a plein de bananes.
Je sais pas, ils ont un délire avec les bananes en ce moment. Oh, c'est bon, ça marche. Désolé d'être
Well,
parti.
it means a lot to be involved with such an impressive collective as you mentioned. And I've said this multiple times, and I know it can be uncomfortable when I say it, but a lot of times we have to get to the root of the issue before we find a solution. And the quote was, I wish
Oui.
America loved black
Ouais, ça
people
bug
as much as it
légèrement.
loves black culture. And this collective, by the way, represents in a lot of ways what's encouraging, but also sometimes disappointing about our role as black people in America. Because we were brought here as labor and to entertain. And we use those vehicles to get paid and move to the suburbs and be the idols of white kids. And so now that we have this collective, I would say sports and entertainment represent the most powerful group of black men in the United States. I'm talking about money, power, celebrity, the ability to mobilize, community involvement, their leadership, their intellect. And so to have all of us pull it in the same direction
Oula,
at the
ils ont un
same
problème de
time
couple.
for
Ouais, ouais.
anything that we're passionate about is going to be a difference maker, but it's definitely going to be a difference maker in the 2020 vote because we're going to make sure we inform everybody that they can let their voice be heard, and failure is not an option.
Jalen, what does voter suppression look like to you?
A perfect example took place recently, Carrie, in Kentucky. It was 6 p.m. at night, and so many people were standing in line enthusiastic to vote. And you know what they did? Locked the doors. And you know what the people did? They continued to bang on the doors, continued to bang on the windows. They continued to let it be known they were not going to leave the premises until they got a chance to vote. And you know what ended up happening? They opened those doors and allowed those
C'est
people
bon.
Je
to
fais
vote.
partie du gang de
So do
bananes.
not be discouraged. These barriers show you that it matters, and we're here to help you break through them. The same thing with our platforms and voices, Carrie, because you know what's going to happen. At some point, Breonna Taylor is not going to be trending anymore. People are not going to be protesting anymore. But it's still up to us to keep making sure that our voices get heard, and this is one way to do so.
Right, and that is a form of being activated, being an activist. It doesn't have to be protesting. It doesn't have to look like what you think traditionally activism looks like. It's voting. It's that simple.
We now have to understand like this is a critical mass moment for this movement to continue to hold up as much steam for as long as possible. And that's what this collection is going to hopefully allow for that situation to happen.
Jalen, in today's age of technology, it should be easier to vote.
No doubt. It's like we call these devices smartphones, but yet I can't vote from them. All of the things that we do in our lives are in our phones. All of these barriers are things that people will need to overcome in order to create a level of enthusiasm to vote. And again,
Je vais faire
this
peur
is
à toutes
not
les bananes.
political. It's your right to do so. And there's so many times where you feel like somebody may have gotten done unjustly in your community. Pay attention to who the judges are, who's running for Senate, mayor, governor. Pay attention who's running for president. And let's make sure in 2020 we make a difference.
Why is more than a vote
Qu'est-ce que encore?
so important and invaluable in our community right now?
Well, because right now, I think we have an opportunity to let our voices be heard louder than ever.
On se
Anytime you see the
moque.
On peut faire ça. On
mobilization
peut faire les émotes
of
rapides.
white kids holding Black
Oh, comment
Lives
tu
Matter
fais?
signs, that
Moi
means
j'appuie sur la
there's
flèche
a
de
breakthrough.
au lieu d'appuyer sur la flèche du bas.
Now, what
Ah non, moi
happens
ça
with
marche
that
pas.
breakthrough
Comment on s'est
is
refait?
the next step. You're going to look down in your email, Carrie. You're going to see all of these companies telling you how they're going to work on their diversity, how they're looking themselves in the mirror. They need to make change. Just like in sports, right? Look on the field and on the court, all those black players. Further you get up, it's like altitude or a ladder. It gets
Bon, ce
thinner
sera
and
vraiment une
thinner.
vidéo qui sera
And
longue.
so A lot of people talk about the system being broken. I hate to remind people that it's not broken, it was built this way. And one of our ways to help change the system is to vote. So that's why more than a vote is so very important. So we can make sure everybody participates and gives themselves an opportunity to let their voice be heard.
I think it's interesting because you talked about black men being very powerful in the U.S. if they're athletes and entertainers, because for so long those have been the only avenues traditionally to create wealth. The NBA season comes back. What are your feelings on the season coming back in the midst of everything that is happening?
I think you'll see players are challenging the establishment more. You're going to see them saying, okay, if you have all of these marketing and promotional deals, how many of them are with minorities? How many people are you employing in NBA? What about certain teams? Who do you have as a minority owner? Or what about the candidates that you have for positions of power? NBA players have proven as blacks that they are now movers and shakers in the game. They're now the dog, not the tail. So if they decide not to play, some of the biggest social changes and conversations have taken place in sports that weren't during the game. Colin Kaepernick was before the game. The Ali Summit was a press conference. So they could mobilize if they chose to. But when and if you do play, challenge the league. Black Lives Matter on the jersey. Continue to make sure that every time people are watching the game, they're also seeing the movement happen.
Jalen, I appreciate you because you are always entertaining and informative at once. I really, truly am looking forward to the NBA season. Thank you for working with More Than a Vote because your voice, your platform, all of it is needed, my friend. Be safe, okay?
Yes, ma'am. I love and appreciate you. One call away always.
Thank you. Love you, brother.
Love you too.
Every conversation that we had today, I hope was helpful for you. I am so grateful to everyone
C'était
who
le
came
dernier.
on with me to talk about what's going on in our culture and how we need to change.
C'est toi là?
Huge shout out to Jalen Rose,
non,
Bunby,
c'est en
Jason
rouge.
Hayward, Yvonne Orgy,
Ok.
and Russ. Their words were inspiring, but also important and invaluable. I hope your phone is full with all the information that we've been able to place in front of you. Again, you need to check out these resources because they are so important because we want you to vote. That is your voice. It is important. We, the people, want you to vote. So, go to morethanavote.org.
Je pourrais pas voter, vu comme je suis mineur. Désolé.
Again, thank you so much for joining us and paying attention because this message
Sinon, je l'aurais fait. Hein.
is invaluable. I'm Carrie Champion for We the People.
La musique est trop cool. Donc j'espère... Bon, c'est la fin. Je m'attendais pas du tout que ça parle de racisme. Comme je vous le répète, c'est un cas très difficile, le racisme. Je respecte les gens qui sont noirs, hein. Ou blanc, voilà.
Également.
On est chacun, on est pareil. S'il y a des gens dans les commentaires qui insultent les noirs, ou insultent tout court, ils seront bannis de la chaîne directe. Car là, ça parlait d'un cas, mais vraiment assez sensible. Donc j'espère que cette vidéo t'aura plu. Bon, comme la routine, abonne-toi et like. Bon, il y a encore la banane au-dessus. Comme je répète chaque fois, parce que là, depuis avant, j'arrête pas de le répéter. Le premier qui insulte, il est dead. Donc, je vous dis bye. On se retrouve sur une nouvelle vidéo.